Hey everybody. I'm a little upset because I just recorded my video. And that took me like 3 hours. Like no bullcrap. It took me a long time to actually like record that video. So now I'm recording again. Um my camera, I guess because it records in 4K, I guess like the video quality was like too big for my phone because that's where I was going to transfer it to my phone so that I could edit. So here we are back on the phone. I'll figure out a way to like record on that on my camera and like be able to put it on my phone. But in the meantime, I'll just record again. Um, in the video, I first started off with basically the basic definition of abuse. And the basic definition of abuse is to treat a human, well, a person or animal cruelly, with violence, and repeatedly. So that's what abuse is. I'm getting into the different types of abuse for you guys because I know that a lot of people just only know of physical and verbal abuse and sexual abuse, but there's more to abuse than that. So, digital abuse. So, digital abuse is the type of abuse that happens when there's cyberbullying going on. That's number one. Secondly, digital abuse is basically when the abuser kind of like tells the victim what to say, what not to say, what to do, what not to do, who to follow, who not to follow, how to present themselves, how not to present themselves on like their social media and stuff like that. Also, with digital abuse comes stalking. Um, those are interchangeable. So if that stalking what happens with the stalking is basically the abuser stalks all your social media to the point where it's kind of like you can't even like be yourself, or you can't even like go on about your day because this person is worried about what you're doing online all the time. And I see this a lot with younger couples, like younger people. Um, this is something that's very, very common amongst the youth. So I just wanted to touch base. Physical abuse. Now that's one of the very common types of abuse. Um, Physical abuse is any harm inflicted on you through touch, physical touch, and it could be the physical touch of an object, or just basically that person is touching you with their bare hands. That could be in a form of scratching, punching, pulling, pushing, um, throwing something at somebody, hitting somebody with something. Um, yeah, those are different forms of physical abuse. Sexual abuse. So sexual abuse is the type of abuse that is when someone basically oversteps their boundaries with you sexually. You did not consent to them touching you inappropriately in any way, and that comes in a form of rape, oral sex, groping, rubbing you, touching you any way inappropriately that you did not consent to is sexual abuse. Um, Sexual abuse is not limited to women. I know a lot of people think that sexual abuse is limited to women and children, but it is not. Men can actually be sexually abused as well. I know there are a lot of men who actually have experienced sexual abuse, but they won't say they have. But in all reality, if they were under 18 and they were having sex with or dating anyone older than 18, this goes for young ladies too, they were sexually abused, they were sexually assaulted. um so men can be victims. I'm sorry, men can be victims of sexual abuse, and sexual abuse is not limited to just children and women. Financial abuse. So with financial abuse, usually this happens amongst people who are married. What goes on with this type of abuse? Um, Usually the person that is responsible for all the financial responsibilities, they usually, well, this isn't just limited to marriages. This can apply to children as well, because I know a lot of children are in abusive homes, whereas though their parents, kind of like limit their limit how much money they give their children, or they don't give their children money for what they actually need, or they try to control their children with money. Same thing for marriages. This is something that happens in marriages as well. Like the person that's like the breadwinner, they try to control their partner with money, and they try to basically stop you from living your day-to-day life with like money. Like how they do it is they give you an allowance, and they don't like give you more money for what you actually need. Like they just give you an allowance and that's it. Like another form of financial abuse is someone who's actually trying to get you fired from your job. Like say if you have an ex, like a crazy ex, like an ex that you cannot get rid of, or a person that you are like, I ain't gonna say beefing, but someone you got a problem with, and they trying to like get you fired. Sometimes in relationships, a lot of people experience financial abuse with their partners when their partner is trying to make them call out of work, quit their job, stop them from working, control their hours at work, things of that sort. That is definitely financial abuse. Basically, financial abuse is any way to control somebody with money, finances. Sometimes it can be in a form of, it can also be in a form of, basically you will never see like where the money is going. You never see where the money is going. However, the money is going somewhere. Or, like I said, you get an allowance and that's just it. You don't even see what else where the money is going. Things of that sort. I think this is I think it's very common, but I don't think it's talked about enough. And I don't think people really actually know that that is a form of abuse. So I'm glad I'm bringing awareness to that. Verbal abuse. Verbal abuse is basically a way for your abuser to basically hurt you with words. And they'll hurt you with words in a ways they'll call you out your name, they'll talk down on you, yell at you. Well, I'm not gonna say yell. They basically they do yell, but that's not part of it. But it's more so like the words that they use towards you to hurt you. Oh, sorry guys, the camera well actually my storage went full, so I had to delete some things. But anyway, psychological and mental abuse. I feel like this is the type of abuse that it really creeps up on you. Like it really creeps up on your self-esteem, and it's very slow. It's a slow process of basically like tearing you down like real slowly. Like mentally, it really wears you down really slowly. So with psychological, my phone died again, but I was in the middle of discussing psychological and emotional abuse. So those two kind of go hand in hand together. More than likely, how they start is with isolation. Usually, the victims of psychological and emotional abuse end up isolating themselves because of they see that they're in an abusive situation, but they're like in denial. And how that happens is like, they tell their friends what's going on in a relationship, and how they're being treated. And usually the friends aren't, their friends aren't trying to hear it. Like their friends aren't agreeing with what's going on. And then they kind of like isolate themselves because of how subtle the abuse is. How subtle the abuse is, it makes you believe that, it was just something really little. It was just something small. It wasn't a big deal. However, it was a big deal, and that's how it starts. But examples of psychological and emotional abuse are basically when your partner kind of like talks down on you, but it's like an indirect way. It's like throwing little jabs at you, throwing little low blows at you. Basically eating up at your self-esteem, but it's like a slow thing. It's really like it's verbal, but it's more so like they try to pick at you. That's all. They just try to pick at you, just little things. Like they just try to pick at the way you dress, or they try to pick at the way your body looks, or they try to pick at how you wear your hair, or how you behave. It's little stuff like that. And then over time, it's kind of like you change your behavior based on what they critique you for, like prior to this. So it's like a real slow thing. It's like they're controlling you. Psychological, I know there's gaslighting involved in both of these types of abuse. And what happens with gaslighting, for those who don't know, gaslighting is when your abuser makes you doubt what you actually either see or what you believe. So you can bring something to this person's attention, and of course they know they're guilty of it. However, they just act like it didn't happen, or they just act like they didn't do it, or they deny it till they're blue in the face, and you kind of like, maybe I was tripping. Relationships where someone is getting cheated on, and usually the cheater, they keep cheating on you, or they keep doing stuff behind your back, and then they just act like nothing happened. Like they just come back like, they knew they did something wrong. However, they won't take accountability for it. And because they're not really mature enough to actually to hold themselves accountable, they will basically ignore that what just happened. Like, you really start to say like, yo, you don't know what you just did? Like, but it starts off small, and, eventually the victim just stops talking about it, or they just leave it alone. But in the back of their mind, they know it's wrong. So another way of psychological and emotional abuse is like isolation. So how this happens is your abuser will tell you not to tell everybody what's going on in your relationship, or your abuser basically tries to turn you against your family, or they try to turn you against your friends, and they basically try to make you believe that they are the only person that you can trust, or they are the only person that you can confide in. And this can cause really major damage, because that's how people be in abusive relationships, and their friends and family don't even know what's going on. Like, that's exactly how, someone could be in such a situation as that, and, all of their folks or people that they associate with don't really know what's going on. Like, that's exactly how that stuff happens. Okay, so I hope you guys liked the video. Thanks for watching, and please like, share, and subscribe.